We're going to continue shining a spotlight on the ANC, obviously launching its 2026 local government elections manifesto. Throughout the morning, we're building up on that coverage. It's happening at the Riverside in Diepsloot, Johannesburg today. So, as you know, this marks the start of the party's election campaign. Yesterday in Sandton, the party announced a list of party members who have put their names forward for mayoral positions. And so the ANC says the manifesto, it's been informed by extensive consultations with communities as it seeks to regain support, strengthen its position in municipalities across the country. And the ANC now entering the election following its 17% point drop. And this was in 2024 general elections. So perhaps we'll preview some analysis on the ANC manifesto, the expectations, the road to the local government elections. We're going to be joined by former Gauteng Premier and former General Secretary of Cosatu, Mbhazima Shilowa, as well as a lecturer, researcher, political analyst, Angelo Fick. On that note, good morning, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us at this hour.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Lots to get through. Let's see how we can condense it. We're building up to the announcement. So, Mr. Shilowa, I'm going to start with you. You've played the role as former, in Premier's office as well. We're looking at translating promises, political promises, into governance and action. The ANC, as it stands, the promises, the manifesto. I mean, what should voters be looking out for as they aim to convince voters for another chance at governing?
My view is that manifestos are for us, the elite, social people, academia, and all of that, because we really want to try and see what is it that they are putting forward. But manifestos should more or less be the same if you're talking about local government, because it's about water, sanitation, electricity. So all political parties will be promising the same. Issue is, do people have the confidence, in the case of the ANC, that having made some of similar promises before, can they translate those now into reality? That's the first thing. The second thing, I think the mistake we make is to look at the ANC's manifesto as talking to one constituency. So you will see the reason why they would always go back to, in 1994, this is where we are, this is where we are today, is because they are not talking to people just in urban areas. They're talking to rural people for whom there have been a real democratic dividend, even as they are being disappointed by the governance at municipality level.
So, Angelo, let me pick up from Mr. Shilowa's point, because they're asking for a chance to govern differently. Just before we get into, some of the hits and misses over the past 32 years, let's talk about, what has changed, what can change, given the vetting process that they've announced ahead of the candidates, perhaps how they're doing things a little bit differently this time round.
Well, I'm not certain if they're doing things necessarily differently. They are going through the process by telling us they're doing things differently, and that's very different. I think this is still a party in which loyalty to party, as with many parties, get rewarded, and that there are complications in that relationship if you're the incumbent. If you're the incumbent party, in other words, you govern, you should have the advantage if you have a positive record in order to then gain voter support, or even have less of a contestation inside your party. But if you have the ANC's checkered record and you are the incumbent, it's not only that you have difficulty with potential voters, you also have people inside the party who are contesting for fewer and fewer positions. So as the ANC's electoral returns have gone lower and lower, what you see inside regions, inside branches, inside particular wards even, is that the contestation is ever more vicious, because people know that fewer of them will get in. So if you go back 20 years, 25 years, with a two-thirds majority, two-thirds of us will get in. But as things move below the 50%, more than half of us are not going to be able to be deployed, more than half of us are not going to get elected in, and our networks are not going to benefit from this. And that, I think, is the ANC's current difficulty, that while it is the incumbent, it is on the ropes, and it is battling against itself, as well as perceptions that it may be raising with potential voters.
There's fragmentation, there's breakaway from tripartite alliances as well. And these are dynamics that have unfolded over the past 32 years. How does that play into your point about appealing to the working class and some of the lived experiences, given the state of municipalities, the erosion, corruption, the lack of delivery, the lack of maintenance, perhaps also the hits along the past 32 years?
I think the facade of a unified alliance is gone.
Okay.
I know that both the ANC and the Communist Party want us to believe that they just have differences in terms of how they approach elections, that they remain the same. I think that the marriage is on the rocks. It's going to be more difficult, especially in the metros, because you're going to find that Cosatu will have to take a neutral stand. So it will be up to individual unions. Which, do they support the party? Do they support the ANC? And as that happens, so your fragmentation is, as Angela says, is no more just inside the ANC. It's a fractured SACP, a fractured Cosatu as well. And it can only eat away from the ANC constituency, which it has been losing, especially in urban areas. So I think this is going to be a very difficult campaign for the ANC. I know there's bravado, and I agree with them. If I was them, I would never say, look, we're just going to lie and play dead. I would say, look, we're going to give it our best shot. Some of their difficulty is the choices they made in metros such as, say, Johannesburg a few years back, where instead of either leading, having removed the DA, they gave a mayoral seat to a one-seat or two-seat party. So when everyone looks, now we blame everything on Mayor Dada Morero. We say, you are the mayor. But we didn't say the same thing about Gwamanda and all of that. Even if you look at Johannesburg, unless you know the numbers, you wouldn't know that this is a coalition government. So they are on the back foot because the view is you are in the saddle, you should have done better. We know you are in coalition, but we live in Soweto. We expected the following, and you did not do it.
I'm so glad you're speaking to that, because it's about the proportional representation, the individuals that are also going to be put forth, and the math that needs to math. The coffers are running dry. We were looking at the cash crunch that was happening, and just some of the figures, the AG revealing there's a 300 billion rand shortfall. So revenue collection is also going down. It's now at 86%. So you've got this big manifesto. You've got candidates that have been put forth. But where's the money going to come from? And then how do you implement that big vision as well?
Absolutely. And this is not even as if you're talking about a small municipality in the Northern Cape. This was once the wealthiest city on the continent. It has the largest budget of any metro area on the continent, and yet you've mismanaged this. And so I think for ordinary voters, it's not only going to be about the mayoral candidate or about manifestos, it's also going to be about punishing the councillors that represented you. So individuals in the ANC who may be very hardworking, sitting in wards that have traditionally been ANC, might end up paying the price because ward councillors only have so much power.
Sure.
And so when it comes to managing the finances, that's been the major problem. Divvying out municipal functions among your coalition partners, that's been a mistake, because in the end, those coalition partners step away, and as Mr. Shilowa pointed out, you as the major partner pay the price. Yeah. And so I think the ANC's crisis in the metros is going to be, they took over, they're governing coalition, they fought potential other coalitions, and yet things have not improved. They've in fact, become quite precarious. It's under their watch that you have cholera in Tshwane. It's under their watch that you have the Lillian and Goy explosion. It's under their watch that you have municipal buildings on fire and hijacked. And this is being exploited by their political opponents.
There's the lack of maintenance as well that has come to the fore. And so we're speaking about succession planning. We're speaking about the leadership contestation as well. We've seen examples where the right figure being put in a position has turned around. Perhaps if we look at Eskom, as one example. Is that approach enough, given what's needed? That election model that's being employed on that front. How do they start to salvage and reinstill trust or woo voters once again?
I think it's true to say the ANC is on a back foot in the metros and some of the big local municipalities. But I think we should not make the mistake to think that the ANC is in a back foot in places like Limpopo. So when you look at the manifesto, when you look at its successes, we must also avoid having an urban bias, which is why sometimes we don't understand why people in the rural areas would vote for the ANC, because we use the prism of, but look at Johannesburg, it's really decaying and all of those. Even the people who are complaining being in Johannesburg, you know, I spent a lot of time, I lived in Dobsonville. If my uncle or aunt were to wake up today, they may recognize their street, but they would not recognize Soweto, because there have been so many changes. There have been so many new development, yet infrastructure has not caught up with it.
Okay, I need to go. Time is running out, so I want to just get a rebuttal from Angelo, because you're speaking about the emotional loyalty that comes with the history and given our country, and those who still, were part of or buy into the party and its frameworks, but the youth, the incoming youth as well. I mean, there's a new generation that one has to appeal to. So how do we balance that equation, perhaps in lieu of what Mr. Shilowa has mentioned, in places like Limpopo, etc.?
So I think it's important to focus on rural development itself has not been a major success either, that there have been massive urbanization, and not least because of the interruption of natural urbanization in the 20th century by colonial and apartheid legislation. But what we've seen is that even in those rural spaces, or spaces that are peri-urban, or spaces that are small towns, you go to Delmas, for example, you see real decay for ordinary people. And then in the rural spaces around them, in the Eastern Cape, for example, where traditional agriculture has been replaced by game farming, massive unemployment. So you've seen urbanization, and as more and more people are younger than the country itself, it's interesting that the oldest party on the continent has had such difficulty pulling those people back into electoral politics and appealing to them. And that might be because too many SASA card-carrying members sit in senior government positions, and it may be time for the party to really have a full face-on argument and fight with itself of getting getting rid of the old and putting in the new. And maybe that will have a chance for it to survive into the 2040s. Because if it doesn't, what we're sitting with is a party that may become rural-focused, that may become loyalty-focused with the elderly or the older, people my age and older, and not with the people who are 27 and younger, for whom the party, does not have that, shall we say, cachet of being liberation movement, of the difference between 1994 and now is not visible to them.
Look, there are so many chess moves ensuing, and we're obviously building up to that manifesto launch. So thank you for joining us for the pre-analysis. Of course, now we'll make sense of the facts and figures once the president has spoken. But Angelo Fick this morning, lecturer, researcher, political analyst, as well as Mbhazima Shilowa, former Gauteng Premier, former General Secretary of Cosatu. They were previewing the ANC's manifesto launch in Diepsloot, and we'll continue to monitor all those developments, our rolling coverage with Samkelo Maseko and the team that are standing by in Diepsloot this morning. But we're going to leave it there. From myself and the team here in Auckland Park. Let's take a look at what's happening there in Diepsloot on the other side. Stay tuned.